they wouldn't be. at 5:05. Can you do that, Linda?
Depends on
5:05.
which clock you're looking at.
Yeah, right here.
Don't ask Drew, it's melting his brain.
Don't look at the screen.
I was told that was wrong. Anyway.
Yes, it is wrong.
So we're going to jump up a little less than last time we were here. Let's start with the introduction. Board members. Linda, would you start us off?
Linda Barrett, clerk.
Thank you.
Bill Biederman, Middlebury Whip.
You done? Dan Rosenthal, Northwest Addison at large.
I keep it short.
John Markowski, resident of Bridgeport and WIB member.
Austin Haynes, resident of New Haven, business manager.
Kim Farnham, I'm resident of New Haven and the community at large member from the Mount Abraham School District and the chairperson. Thank you.
Steve Horzak, a resident of Middlebury, representative for ACSD, and I am the vice chair.
Steve Fox, resident of Middlebury.
I'm Christina Macklin from North Harrisburg, Addison Northwest School District representative.
Wendy Pratt, assistant director here.
Nicole McTavish, superintendent and director.
Shannon Thurber, executive admin assistant.
David Roberts, director of operations.
And we have people online.
Christine, Laura, and Liz.
Okay, cool. Christine?
Hi, Christine Wesley, workforce development resident of Middlebury.
Thank you. Liz?
Liz Sayre, MAUSD fiscal rep.
Who else we have?
Laura Harthan, ACSD rep.
Thank you, Laura. Could we see them?
They don't have the cameras on. We
Why?
don't see them unless they turn their cameras on.
Is it possible for you guys to put your cameras on so then if you do have a question, then we're aware of it?
So it's Laura and
thank
Liz online and Christine.
Helpful? Okay.
I can have my camera on in a little bit. I can't at the moment.
Gotcha.
All right.
Thank you. We just want to check on you and make sure it's really you. You can hold up your ID if you'd like, you know, all that important. Thank you.
Show us the roof of your car.
The trunk, where would be behind you?
Yeah, like that.
Exactly.
Looking at the ceiling.
So I need a motion to approve the agenda in front of you.
I move that we approve the agenda as provided.
Seconds.
All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. A motion to approve the December 18th, 2025 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Seconds.
Any questions, concerns? Somebody wasn't there that's listed, anything like that?
Who seconded, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. Any public comment on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Monthly accounts payable. It's a link, but if you'd like to go through it, we appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, so
Thank you.
this is a quick review of December's expenditures. For the general fund, we had $143,492.73 in accounts payable. Our payroll was $262,665.75. In adult ed, we had $1598.12 in accounts payable. Activity in the bakery. In our enterprise account, there were $10,622.82. Expenditures, student activities was $1998. No activity in scholarship. And our BERF, the Building and Equipment Reserve Fund, $55,516 even. And that was the month of December. It's worth noting too, not included on the link there, is we paid our line of credit down in full as we discussed in the last meeting. So we transferred $1.7 million of principal payments to get the line of credit fully caught up and paid down to zero. And that was executed on December 12th when we got our Ed Fund payments and tuition payments in. So we're in good standing there.
Nice job.
Excellent, no more interest on that, huh?
Yeah, no more interest as Dan alluded to.
Any questions from anybody? Anything you want to add, or are you good?
I did have
Thank
one
you,
question. The makery, do you happen to know off the top of your head, or could you let us know what the balance is on that?
The balance?
The cash balance in the
How
account?
much money do they have in
It's
there?
a little over $6,000.
$6,000.
You still meeting on Thursdays?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to sign up and pay my, have we fixed the website? I've been using the Makery and I haven't been able to pay.
So remember that Makery is an independent entity, so we don't really control their website.
Okay,
Faith is here, we could probably catch her after this meeting.
okay, yeah, well, Faith kind of, not sure, I've talked to Faith. I'm just wondering, because I'd be happy to write a check to somebody if they take it from me, but.
I'll take it.
I was gonna say, I'm not gonna have
I was gonna say,
No, I mean, I will. I'll take it.
I don't even know how much it is, so I-
I'll deposit it in the account. Feel free.
So we don't control the website, but we control the money?
We don't control the money, we're kind of a pass-through,
Oh,
right? The
Right.
Makery keeps their money with us because they're not an official,
gotcha. Okay.
right?
You got faith.
Is that how it works?
Yes.
Yeah, I think a way I would think of it is we're sort of custodians of the asset, but we don't drive the decision making behind how those funds are allocated.
Okay.
Is that fair, David? Would you?
And there's nothing in the budget related to the Makery?
No.
Okay.
But her response is when I try to pay her is, you guys on the board, you do enough, you don't have to pay.
She didn't tell me that.
Dan.
She didn't tell me that.
Get schmoozed.
Now you know,
Dan.
She says, I'll take your money. No, all right, I'll work that out.
There you go. So I need a motion to, no, actually, consent agenda, the whole thing, to accept that.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Dan. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Action item, first one is approve the annual meeting warning, and I'm gonna ask our political major for Robert's rules and all sorts of things over there in the corner, and if Linda's reviewed it for us.
Yeah. I know.
How's it look?
Looks good to me.
Okay. You're a guru. You know that, right? I'm gonna give you a
Oh,
little.
yeah, we wouldn't have gone forward without
No way.
her approval.
Oh, no, not gonna happen.
She corrects us if we're wrong.
Dave, Nicole, Wendy, everybody's okay.
Lots of heads in that.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So, no questions on the way it's written, why it's written that way. I'm trying to look around. We don't have any real new members sitting here. They're kind of online. If you have any questions, feel free to call in, and people will walk you through it. What's the date on that, you guys? Down the bottom,
When the
19th of February is that annual meeting.
February's annual meeting.
Well, that will all take place. Thank you.
And then the board meeting follows, right?
and the Australian ballot is until March.
Can we do our meeting first?
We do, we have,
We have 4 or
it's at
5.
the bottom of your board agenda, the annual meeting is at 4 and then
Yeah,
the
4 to
regular
5.
board meeting's at 5.
Okay. We've done it both ways through the years, so
Mhm.
we haven't been overly attended, but you never know. You never know. Anyway, so I need a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Thank you. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Or hearing none. motion carries. The annual tuition rate for FY27, the rate is listed. I'm going to ask for a motion, and somebody please read that when they do that.
I'll make that motion to approve the FY27 announced tuition rate of $38,894 per year per full-time student.
Second?
No. Steve's got it.
Any questions? I think at this time, I'm just going to ask, I went to the roadshow at Mount Abe. Had informal conversations with others, but if you want to talk about Any questions that people have? Christine?
Oh, at Aston Northwest?
Yeah.
It was a great presentation.
Oh, thank
I think those guys rocked it. Nicole and David were both there, and I think everybody was wowed. I think the only gasp in the room was that amount of money that we just said out loud. So, that's a large amount of money to wrap your head around. But
We did clarify for Jim's board in particular, and I think we're going to incorporate it into the budget preview, the roadshow in the future, is that most of our technical students are half that amount, and our pre-tech students are half that amount. So their pre-tech students are generally a quarter or less FTE. The Middlebury students are a little bit less than a quarter. And so the only students this year that actually are full-time are culinary. So that tuition rate is the full rate. And then also remember that the sending school districts don't pay that whole amount, right? The AOE pays a chunk, and then the sending schools pay the chunk that's left, which is about 13,000. I can't remember off the top of my head.
13,600.
Thank you.
80 something.
And that would be for full-time, so then it would be half of that for technical student,
27,000
Thank you.
full-time, 13,000 half-time.
and then half of that for a pre-tech student. So while the number is big, it's fractional by the time you get down to what the sending school districts actually pay.
Do you have what the sort of regular high school is, what the student rate is in the regular school?
I could get back to the board with that, but I don't have that.
It was just a curiosity,
They are publicly available. Just if you
Right.
Google announced tuition rates in Vermont, the AOE publishes all of the sending districts. Every district statewide is publicly available, but we can circulate that if you need it.
I can tell you Addison Northwest in a minute. We just voted on it last week.
Steve, how were the Middlebury questions?
I don't think there were many questions, and they were mostly when you were talking about increasing the catchment area. It was mostly a discussion around that. But, that was it.
So our tuition rate for secondary is $30,227.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Liz, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Any
Yes.
reflection from your board after we did the presentation? Any questions they had?
Yep, first of all, thank you so much, and my apologies. I did offer and make sure everybody knew they could reach out, right? And I would get answers if anything else came up. But no, nobody gave me any feedback. We're offering 3 new school reorganization, so we've got 3 options for educational delivery that we're presenting to our communities. So that's really a huge, taking all of the attention, I think, at the moment. And my apologies for being late for their presentation. So,
Yeah, Liz.
but nothing specific to this. And so I think that's probably good. But I think that you did a great job. I did watch the recording, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Liz, where were you giving that presentation? I can't remember. I know you had to come in a little later.
Starksboro.
Starksboro.
It did not go as planned. But I was there. I was in Starksboro at their select board meetings. We're doing presentations to all the select boards. Yeah.
Well, let us know if you do hear anything. We appreciate it.
Will do.
Okay. Did we vote on that yet? I'm losing track.
Yes.
The tuition rate, yeah, I don't think we
Okay,
got
thank you.
that yet.
So the adult learning tuition rate.
We
Nicole-
need the vote.
I'm
Is that
sorry,
what
we
you're
didn't
saying?
vote on the other one. I checked it off.
One person said, I thought you had, but
Yeah.
maybe you haven't. I haven't written anything down. So.
Okay.
Okay.
All those
Let's
in
do it again
favor?
just in case.
Christina read it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was
Oh, okay.
seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now you can check it out. Thank you. Approve the adult learners tuition rate of $7,000 per full-time student. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, so occasionally we have people in the community who want to attend the day program with the high school students, like the regular technical programs. And the state asks us to set a tuition rate for that, and it can be up to 40%, am I correct? Yes, up to 40% of the full tuition rate, but we don't generally go that high. And we also work closely with the students we try to get close to what VSAC is able to help students with, but so we have to set a rate anyway. So we're gonna set it at $7,000, and then with the 1 or 2 students that approach us, we generally work with them and with VSAC.
So anything else available to them besides VSAC or no grant money, that type of thing?
There are many
Okay.
organizations, and we have some philanthropies that work directly with us too when there's a gap, that are really wonderful support.
I was just curious what the rate was last year.
4,600.
Thank you.
So just a little context there. In the past, we didn't really look at it as a function of what our announced tuition was. I remember 5 years ago, Denise, I don't know if you guys remember Denise, she's like, what do you want to set the rate at? So I was like, raise it $100. So it went from 45 to 46 to 47. Now we put some thought into it, and it's where it should be.
As long as there is assistance, I think.
Yes.
Letting the public know that. Thank you. So we need a motion to,
I move that we approve the 2027 adult learner tuition rate of $7,000 per full-time student.
Second?
Steve, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Approve the ESA staff master agreement for FY 26 through FY 28. Want to speak to it, or it's in the link?
Yeah, it's
Feel free to read it.
if anybody wants to read a lot of legalese, it's right there. There were some changes that were negotiated, and Austin and Kim and myself and Nicole and everybody, thank you all for your help and your efforts and all of that.
And we had a great attorney.
Yes.
He was fabulous. Anyway, but all those in favor of approving that? Sure.
What you have included, this is the new agreement?
Yes.
This is the new agreement, okay. There's no way to get a red line copy of what changed?
I suppose we could.
I mean, the money, yes, is the most important, but I'm also interested in.
We can tell you, but we
okay.
don't. So they were able to get full day of pay, whatever their actual rate in hours are for the holidays that occur during the time they work. So full year, people get all the holidays that, like administrators and that are the federal holidays that are listed in the master agreement, which is new. And people that work the school year get all the ones that occur during the school year. Previously, there was language, it was a certain dollar amount that was kind of low.
Yeah, it's flat
They got.
75.
But now we're gonna pay them the full day's rate for those holidays. They also, substitute pay went up by $25 per class. So they now is a rate of, I think it's $50 per class that if a paraprofessional or an office person covers a class, they get their wage plus this amount. And then the rest, I think, was just the pay.
Percentage rate.
Austin, do you remember anything else?
As far as TAs go, not off the top of my head. I think the biggest crux focused around the salary schedule and negotiations there.
Yeah.
The 6% settlement. Yeah, on the spot, I can't remember any of the other major items that were agreed upon.
Yeah, it was almost all about the pay scale. As the board knows, we went back and forth between the different models.
And it's 3 years. In the retroactive pay from last June, is that right?
Yeah, so once we finalize the contract, both the master agreement and then the employee contracts will issue retro pay similar to the process that we did with faculty last year. And that'll make up for the wages that they would have accrued starting July 1st.
Any other questions? Need a motion to accept that agreement?
Move to accept the negotiated contract between the ESA Staff Master Agreement for 26-28 as linked in the agenda.
Second.
Second?
Thank you. Chuck. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. The closing of the engineering program.
So as the board knows, we had the engineering program on pause, and we did run it through the registration process again, and we were not able to generate enough student interest to run the program this year. Should the board decide, we do have to, there's a formal process to close a program through the Agency of Education, which I need to fill out a document and send to them. And I need the board to officially vote on closing that engineering program. I think the board knows that we've taken many aspects and components and curricular pieces of that program, and now they're part of the advanced manufacturing program. So we do still have an outlet for students who have that interest, but it's more focused on the advanced manufacturing than a pure engineering course.
Any questions? So if we close it, my question is this, can be brought back any time, or do we have to reapply?
No, you can only have the program on pause for 2 years, which we have, and then we have to make a decision to either run it or close it.
Okay.
And if we close it, then should in the future we want to bring it back, we would go through the process of starting a new program again.
And when you, if you remember the construction program.
Same thing.
Same thing. We went through that process.
Exactly.
We couldn't get everybody to
Yeah.
sign up.
Nicole, do we know if the students who want to go to Stafford, are there enough people there for the engineering program who couldn't get in? Do they have an engineering program?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I could bring it back to the board. I mean, we can Google it real fast. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Be interesting
But,
that Stafford's overstocked.
Christine?
Sorry.
You said you didn't get enough interest. I was just wondering how many students did sign up, or was it like too short?
No,
One
it was
person
only-
signed up,
It was 3.
3 people.
And to his credit, Dan Ahrensmeyer contacted each of those students. And 1 or 2 of them did sign up for advanced manufacturing.
Okay.
Dan, did you have a question?
No, I'm
Comment?
just asking, going back to Stafford, you'd have to compare apples to oranges to say that their engineering programs on waiting list. I guess it'd be difficult to say they're on a waiting list, so let's bring them here. I mean, without a direct comparison, it's hard to say. You're getting so few enrollees here, unless something's really different down in Rutland.
One last quick question. Is that program in the new booklet?
Engineering?
Yeah.
No.
Need a motion?
So moved that we close the engineering program as per recommendation.
And second?
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Unanimous. Surplus of equipment. I don't know who wants to speak to that.
So we have a few pieces of equipment which are either not usable anymore or not, the value in fixing them up is not there. It would be better for us to move on to a newer piece of equipment. They do have some fair market value though, so the board would need to surplus them. And then there are certain rules that we have to follow about how we dispose of those items, which are listed in the memo. And so we are asking the board permission to surplus the 2001 Dodge, the 2006 Ford, and the old skid steer. And then any monies that we are able to gather from the sale of those, we would put into the VERP for future use.
Is one of those the bus? Yeah, one.
The middle one is the bus.
Okay, thanks.
I move that we allow the surplusing of those 3 pieces of equipment / vehicles.
Second. Bill?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
We have a new voter on the screen. Anybody opposed? She said no. Okay, good. A motion carries. Thank you. The second reading, and we have what, 3 policies here. Steve, I don't know who wants to take over.
Yeah, I don't know, unless there is someone who has read them and has questions about them. You saw these policies last time, A21 and A24, all have been vetted. I think F5 is the only one, so here's the situation. There was some confusion as to whether something had been warned for 10 days and passed. And these had been passed, but we couldn't find a record of that process. So it was presented last time. This is now a second reading, which is more than 10 days away. So this is more dotting I's and crossing T's than it really is approving policies. You've seen all 3 of these before. It's just in the formal process, we have to ask if there are any questions either from the public or the board before we officially update those policies. So,
Policy A21.
The board does not know this yet because it just happened. So on policy A21, the VSBA has adopted a new policy.
Perfect.
So we went ahead and linked to the new policy, the new version, which was adopted January 2nd.
Which link is it?
It is the last one.
Okay.
4th one.
So I'm not sure how the board would like to proceed.
I don't think we can vote on it if we haven't.
Sounds like February.
Yeah.
So here's the deal with this. All of these policies that we're still working in that little vat that said we were trying to get ahead of having to approve our entire policy manual in 2026. By the way, it is 2026 if you hadn't noticed. So we were trying to spread the work out a little bit. And as we did it, the VSBA kept pulling the rug out from under us. Every time we would update a policy, they would say, oh, never mind. This one was literally updated like 2 days before we met. And so it was, there is nothing wrong with approving the policies as we've gone through the procedure because we have properly gone through the procedure. And if you would like, we can go back in the policy committee and review that again, but the question as to what's going to happen with policy, if there's any kind of unification of the career center and all that kind of stuff, we are just trying to make it so that we don't have a massive 30 policy lift come spring, because all the rest of the policies that don't get approved through this process all come due in June. And so we would have to review everyone in the manual. If you approve what we have passed on to you tonight, that takes 3 policies off of that list. We can always go back if we're still around in 3 years and review that. But many of these policies, especially things like public participation and board superintendent relationships, they are cosmetic at best, the changes that they make. So it's the board's pleasure as to what we want to do. It is acceptable, though, to take this as a second read and adopt it as a new policy and then put it back on the list to be reviewed again. So, yeah.
If we do approve number 7, for example, would we just basically approve the 3rd link rather than the 4th link?
Yes.
Great.
What's your pleasure, people?
Let's move forward.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Need a motion for number 7.
Can we do all of them together, or we have to do them
I
individually?
think we should do them separately.
So moved. Approve of second read of policy A21.
3rd link.
3rd link.
And I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you all for the clarification. It's unanimous. Number 8, I need a motion. Policy F5.
I move that we accept policy F5 behavior code assessment for a second read and adopt it.
I'll second.
Thank you, Kristen. All right. All those in favor? Oh, or do you have a question, Bob?
No, I was going to say aye. I just get ahead of myself.
Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Number 9, which is A24.
I move that we approve policy A24, board superintendent relationship.
Second.
Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
And I'd just like to comment, Shannon, thank you for cleaning those up.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
And I think moving forward, we got a good group going now. It's so much organized and it's gonna go smoothly now.
Can I ask Steve a question? Did you get verification about that date, Warren date?
No, I did not.
Okay, there is a question about
There is a
that.
question about how the VSBA wants us to record them because their policies say warned and adopted, and it's a little unclear as to what warned means. Is that the warning for the meeting or their first read, or is that the first read itself? Mark Koenig, the guy who does policy, was not available when I called, and so that's still pending. But it is a fairly cosmetic change, and we know what our database says. So when if the VSBA comes back and says, "Oh no, that's not the right one," we have the warnings for those agendas and can go with either date. So it's whatever VSBA says. So.
Any other questions? All right, moving on. Number 10, the internal financial controls checklist for schools first teacher. And Austin, will you take that over?
Yep, this is my baby. So this is a once annual management self-assessment of our financial operations in the business office and the school district as a whole. Per statute, the state requires us to do this once a year, and so the process is generally we'll conduct a sort of a self-audit or self-assessment, open it up for discussion, and then Kim, as the de facto authorizer of the board, we have 2 months from the time that the information is presented to approve it. So if we don't get to the final product tonight, we can come back either next month or the month after and agree on it. It's pretty standard. There's some interesting questions, but it generally asks,
Wow.
do you have invoices for purchases? Do you have W-9s for vendors? So those sorts of questions. It covers everything from how duties are segregated. Do we have budget oversight and monitoring? How do we handle cash reconciliations and cash receipts? How is payroll processed? Do we have safeguards over our assets and financial records? And then are we generally compliant with certain policies and laws and that sort of thing? And any place where I indicated don't know was sort of the maybe column, either because I didn't know or because it was an area that I flagged as an area that we're either working on or we need to have a discussion about. Not necessarily in a heightened or negative sense, but just matter of fact. So there were 3 on the front page, and then page 2 there had 3 areas as well. So I'm happy to go through each of those lines, or I'll turn it over to the board if there are other questions or observations that came up beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, the first one, the don't know, is something that we've talked about, somehow getting some professional development around signing those receipts.
Oh, for the financial training?
Financial training, yeah.
Yeah, so and I think I think the questions are open-ended by design. You know, there's the more global, does the board chair or the board attend like scheduled financial trainings, and then one layer below that is, do we have trainings that we conduct in-house? And so the things I think of are at the conferences the board attends annually, that could sort of count. I don't know if that's stretching it or not, but I would turn that over to the group for opinion on that. And then beyond that, to your point, Dan, do we need to schedule or organize more formal trainings? I think that's the purpose of this tool, is to have those conversations. So.
Okay, so you can check the box, yeah, yes, next year.
Well, I think too, if you do come in and do, bills or whatever you want to call them, you're right. If you don't know what you're doing, you really should ask a few questions and what the procedural piece is. how many people review those, because there are quite a few people that do it,
And what we review.
and what you're looking at, because sometimes it can be confusing. And you have the printout, you match things up, and again, Austin can go through that if you do sign up. As for signups, really need to look at that sheet and at least make an attempt to try and attend at least a couple of them. It would be really helpful. We have some veteran kings of signing, and we thank you for taking your time to do that.
If I can say one thing, for new members, it's also a really good way to see where the money's going, what we're spending it on. And it's a nice way to just kind of look and say, wow, that's our insurance check on a monthly basis or bi-weekly basis. You'll really learn a lot. It'll open your eyes. And it's one of those things that people on the board, you really should be doing it. I know a lot of people have different commitments, and I have a little bit more of a flexible schedule. But doing things like that, it's important. It's important so you know, and it's also the kind of thing that when you go back to your boards or whoever you're representing, they're going to say, so what's going on there? And you can say, well, here are the things that I'm learning. You know, here's another picture of it. So.
Again, when we do have an audit, which will be yearly, you know, it's a reference point of where all this comes from. And Austin's usually a nice person and he talks to you. He might give you candy if David hasn't eaten enough. Right?
So where is the statute located that gives the wisdom on internal financial controls?
Where is it located?
Where's the statute? Do you have to like do some sort of ceremony in front of the statute?
Kiss the Buddha.
Oh.
Or is that supposed to be statute?
VSA.
I thought you were saying statute.
Well, it's supposed to say statute. It's supposed to say statute, but number 10 says statute. So I was wondering where the statute was.
He's busting your chops.
He's making a joke.
You're saying on the agenda or on this
I
document?
apologize, that's been read a lot of times by a lot of people this week.
She had a busy week.
I wish I could take ownership of that, but I can't, unfortunately.
But when you come in and sign bills, there might be a new one. Be surprised.
Yeah, it might be a purchase order for a statue.
There you go.
A real life cow.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, as written, does this pass, or do we need to have a revision for next month? I'm happy either way.
So the second from bottom is actually still in kind of discussion. Is it don't know or?
Mostly because it's part of our audit, and yeah, there's too many unknown facts that I can't definitively say it was theft or embezzlement, but I can't say that it wasn't either. So until we have the audit finalized, because this was last fiscal year, that's sort of why I pushed it off to that maybe or don't know column.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that? The insurance company has said that it's not provable, so we're not ever going to know. And because of the small amount, the FBI is not going to do anything. So it's a done deal.
Okay.
And it's not going to come up in the audit. I mean, they know what it is, but they're not going to investigate. So.
Okay.
What's the status of the audit?
Still working through the preliminary stages. So because we finished the FY24 audit, we signed that off in November. We're now transitioning to the pre-work and the initial stages of getting the FY25 audit off the ground. So they've sent us the homework to do. There's a self-assessment, questionnaires, there's a bunch of documentation we have to locate, get them bank reconciliations, that sort of thing. So we're still working through those stages with them.
Yeah, is this one of those oversight policies that we're checking a box for, or is this just a state requirement, or, because, often when you present these, it'll be, this is satisfying X, Y, Z.
Yep, this is per statute. At the top left of the document, it shows what statute from the state.
16 VSA.
Yeah, I get that, but you're just showing it to us because you're required to show it to us, or are we? Okay.
The state's requiring us to do this.
Got it.
And it sounds like number 2 on second page, like standard gate receipts. The answer would be no, and said A.
I think so. Yeah, we don't really do attendance at events. And I just wanted to have that as a definitive no, rather than, like, it's not applicable in my mind. So you can move that to the no column.
Yeah. Because you do have an answer.
That's helpful. Thanks. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Field days doesn't work into that situation at all, right?
For, because we're not responsible for the attendance of that event.
Right,
That's
right.
field days, yeah.
And then what about the one towards the bottom where the receipt part, or where was that? Yeah, I guess it was the bottom of the first page. Yeah. Student
Yeah,
activity
great
reports
point.
within 48 hours.
Yep, so, and that's why I put it in that maybe column.
Yeah,
When the business office does receive the monies, we go through our reconciling and we deposit them. The delay can be when that money is turned over to us.
Right.
So depending on the players at field days, some of them are accustomed to the daily deposits, but we may not get some of those deposits for a week or two after the event occurs. So it really depends on the scenario. So I can move it to the no if we know that, like, field days is an example that would disqualify that, but
well, it sounds like it's fluctuates, so.
It sort of
probably
depends, yeah.
maybe is okay, or don't know.
Why do they want to know if you take a regular vacation?
It's because for finance, if you don't,
Burnout.
people that are stealing money don't take vacations because they got to keep the game going. So in audit, they require you to take 2 weeks of vacation, and you cannot actually access your email.
Wow.
So that's why.
But also the other questions about, cross training, are duties shared and are they segregated at the same time? I think the concept of burnout in the business office is pretty real. So if you don't take time off, it's a liability and exposure to the district and the board. If we're flat out and don't have time off, it's a vulnerability.
We're in school, man.
If you're going to steal money, you got to be diligent about
Any
it.
other questions?
Another reason.
You can't enjoy it.
I'm not hearing any questions.
No questions.
I'm hearing a lot of chat.
Even I'm done.
So I
Thank you,
approve,
Dan.
or I move that we approve the internal financial controls checklist.
Second it.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. State Board Rules and Perkins, 16 BSA 154 1C. Anybody?
So remember, we have these, the state board requires that the RABs, which we aren't, do these rules. There are 10 of them every year. That recently we were informed that even though we're not a RAB, that we're a school district board of trustees, we also need to do these things. So we are now doing them. So most of these things we do as a regular business throughout the school year because we're a school district, but we also need to show an intentionality around it for these rules. So what our practice is going to be is to meet the letter and spirit and intent of that, which is to write you a memo which says how we have done this, and then we're going to link in all of the proof that we have in fact done it. So the first one is about budget control, that you have in fact set an operational budget, and we have done that. You did that last month, and then so we have attached the warning, the budget itself, and the minutes of that meeting. The second one is that we set an actual curriculum for adult ed and secondary curriculum, including our program of study. Hot off the presses, we were able to link our very fancy program of study, and then we've also linked our adult ed, our NASC accreditation, and our program web pages. And for the third one, which is, do we still need a satellite program? And we included that. We did discuss that as part of our budgeting process. And we also, just for an extra little support, we put in what the FTE report is for those programs, showing that they are doing well. And then for the last one is that we do in fact have an admissions process, which we have linked the documents supporting that here. So we feel like we have met both the spirit and intent of these rules, but we do need a formal board approval so that we have that on record.
Any questions? Steve?
Yeah, for the satellite programs, is that only Virgins or does that include North Campus or what's the?
This is only the Virgins one. North Campus is still part of our main program offering.
Okay.
Good question.
Any other questions? Seeing none. I need a motion.
I move that we adopt number 11 state board rule and in Perkins
Excuse me.
to satisfy the intent and spirit of all of those rules.
A second.
I'll second it. Does Perkins pay enough to actually pay for somebody to do all this work?
No.
Excuse me.
Is it dropping every year?
I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Nobody knows.
The jury is out.
All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And on that note, if you get a chance to watch some of the hearings going on at the State House, there's a couple of good ones in regards to what's going on over there and how our legislators are either with the program or not. I'll say that on being recorded. And the question, and the type of questions that they're asking. Zoe Saunders did a presentation for she and the governor's recommendation regarding education right now. CTE got a lot of conversation at the end of it. No, solution resolutions or anything like that, but it was an interesting conversation because it's a very different type of style of funding that's being recommended. Wasn't necessarily accepted, but it'll be interesting to see what they do. And it's a centralizing look at CTE. And talking about 2 years out, I think it was, that they would like to see this happen. But it's a pretty, detailed, but well, not detailed. There's a lot of questions, how they're going to do it, the procedural, and it sounds good to them. But there was some definite pushback, which I don't think was a bad thing. But you can go on YouTube and look them all up. Reports to the board, superintendent.
So kind of piggybacking off what Kim was just talking about, I've linked 2 documents which the Secretary of Education put out publicly in the Senate Committee on Education on Wednesday. The CTE director, no educators had seen any of these documents. They were brand new, revealed at that committee. What the agency is still with is this idea of a one CTE entity across the state. It's no longer a district. Now it's being called an Educational Service Agency, ESA. So the person that would be hired to run it is no longer a superintendent, but instead an executive director. There are many other implications for not being a district and instead being an agency, but there aren't a lot of details there, so I don't know what all that means. The entity, though, would now be in charge of, would employ the educators, so all the CTE educators would be employed by this entity, no longer by their district. And this entity would manage professional learning, would manage curriculum design, would manage instructional support, and would manage program oversight across all delivery settings. So that's CTE standalones, high school CTE programs, and now middle school. They would add middle school to that mix. When I'm reading this list, I'm thinking that's a lot of staff at the leadership positions to oversee all of that work, because that's it goes on to talk about not only overseeing the curriculum, but actually developing the curriculum, implementing the curriculum, and doing the professional development for the curriculum over probably 40 different program areas. because we have 24 here, and we are definitely not the biggest entity out there. So that's a lot of work. And interestingly, it would also, this entity would take over program approval. So right now, the Agency of Education approves all CTE programming, but now it looks like it's moving to this entity. In addition, it would be required to make sure that that programs were meeting some set of standards and metrics which aren't defined here, but that this entity would be in charge of deciding what programs opened and which programs closed. Not the local or the superintendent or the principal, or it would be this entity making those decisions. It would also be in charge of convening statewide program-specific advisory boards. So like they would run all the advisory boards, like advanced manufacturing and construction and whatever medical professions. It would be run from this entity rather than at the local level. Other things is there is very little detail, but this is all resting on the premise of having both a statewide foundation formula for K-12 education. But this, interestingly enough, the idea is that all CTE funding, which they say is $70 million, and I don't know where that number comes from, and I do not have any idea if that's accurate. But they're saying about $70 million would be pulled out of the education fund and have a separate and different fund that was only for running CTE that would fund all of this work. So there's not detail here, but that's the idea, is that it would no longer be part of the K-12 mix, but instead would be a separate and different fund that funded CTE.
Is that an annual budget, Nicole? Or is it unclear?
I believe that is the case, yes. That the claim right now is that CTE costs $70 million annually. I have no idea.
Current statewide CTE spending levels.
I do wonder though, because we're a small entity and we're 8 million. I can imagine Burlington Tech and Essex must be many times that. I wonder. In addition, this entity would be creating and making happen now middle school CTE, which does not currently exist. They would also, like I said, design and disseminate and make model units and curricular resources, and provide training for not only instructors, but also school counselors. K-12 school counselors is what it does not say CTE school counselors, so I'm thinking regular school counselors to benefit more students enrolling in CTE. In addition, they would be responsible for evaluating the budgetary needs and required to outfit and maintain all of the lab spaces across all the districts, no matter how they were developing and delivering CTE. So if it's in a high school or it's in a middle school or if it's a standalone district, this entity would be responsible for figuring out the budgets and maintaining those spaces. And it looks like they're taking over Perkins, which is one benefit to this. They would also have to have a transportation department because they would be coordinating transportation across the state for all students to seamlessly access their work-based learning, their early college, their industry credentials, their CTE programming, and so everything. This transportation department would figure out how to get kids to all the things they need to get to, as well as partnering with post-secondary institutions. So that's a lot of things for an entity. The timeline is that in this fall, September of 27, they would hire the executive director, and they isn't defined. I'm not sure who hires them or who they report to, but the executive director would start in fall of 27. They would have 3 months to convene the statewide advisory boards, figure out all the programs and curriculum, launch system design and stakeholder engagement, and plan the operations, which they would need to have done by December of 27. And then they would figure out the legal and operational implications by including contracts and negotiation agreements by July 28, so that's 6 months. And then they would start July 1/28. Yes.
Sounds like there would still be a role for building level management, like business office and you know, like talking about the transportation.
She never discussed it.
Yeah, we were talking about it.
Nope, I didn't hear it.
So I don't know the answer. This entity, though, is specifically, one thing that is called out is that they do own transportation for students to get to all this CTE programming.
Right. Right, they can own it, but that seems like a job just to be the building level organizer of where the students are going and whatnot. So it seems like there would still be a significant.
There'd have to be some sort of partnership. Right?
So are they, the $70 million number that they're looking at, is that just what the state's gonna commit to? Or is that gonna take care of all CTE?
I don't know.
Because that's just under 13,000 for, if you figure out, you're between 5,000 and 6,000 CTE students in the state. If you just average it out.
Yeah, it comes out to about 5 million, with 15 districts, it comes out to $5 million per district. And that
Seems
doesn't
like-
include, as you mentioned, the expansion to the middle school and the hiring. How many teachers would you have to hire to do all this? I mean, teachers are expensive. I just, you know, anything like this, as they did with the districting, should have a budget with it. And, you know, this looks a little pie in the sky. Interesting.
We were discussing earlier places that we've worked where they pulled a marketing plan out of a book. And then they did that in a different language and they presented it to us. We're just sitting there going, yeah, it's about what it looks like.
It's almost like a comedy. No, honestly, it's just.
But it's
doesn't
not.
even seem.
Well, she was asked a lot of
Normally,
questions, that's why I suggest you watch it, if you haven't, because she couldn't answer some of them. And obviously, there's not a lot of detail in regards to the existing buildings. There was a big discussion about building new buildings, which I was like, really? Okay. You know, and how are we gonna do that?
Right.
The mapping question still is kind of like non-existent at this point. Or not decided, let's put it that way.
I think the other point that the secretary made is that this is not intended to be forever, that this is a medium step between what we have now, then we would move to this model, and then eventually there would be comprehensive high schools, and we would move from this to that.
So interesting because, yeah, it starts out with the inequality due to access. So in other words, we're going to have more centers rather than less if you want to improve access. And that brings us, you know, again, at 15 districts is $5 million each. So the more, at $70 million, you start going with 20 districts, and you've got nothing left.
Well, I just
Except for
think
the Perkins money,
I
which
just-
we know.
yeah.
It's
Walking
really
through the
great.
document, in my mind, I'm taking through what a district office is gonna look like to serve this number of,
Yeah.
if you think about just employees, we probably have well over 1,000 employees in the CTE districts across the state. And that is a pretty large HR, risk management, accounts payable, accounts receivable, I mean, just the business office, right, piece of that. Then you think of the whole curriculum department, you're gonna have, I don't know how many, 40, let's say, programs. So you have to have technical experts to be able to drive this work, as well as some sort of leadership to tie it together. You're gonna have to have a whole group of people that work with post-secondary institutions. You're gonna have to have a group of people that work with the whatever, there's gotta be some sort of board or something, right? So it's, I'm just thinking, this is a big deal.
For 2 years from now, or.
Right, 18 months.
18, yeah.
The devil is in the details. I'd like to see
She also spent some time talking about the changes in the Department of Ed and this, you know, restructuring of that, which she was told to do, I guess. You know, so that's kind of an interesting piece too, especially like special ed and some of the other things that have been under other people. She's kind of moved them around.
Right, what's kind of flying under the radar, and myself and some other people have pushed on when we're talking, is so the new org chart, there is now a department of what I think it's called academics or something, it's in here. But in the academics department, generally with, I mean, math, English, science, all of that, right? But CTE is not in that department. CTE is a subsection of that department called educational programs, which is with early learning, so pre-K, I'm trying to think what else is in there. Oh, special ed, and then us. So we're not actually, even though this language talks a lot about how we have to be core and foundational to academics for kids, we're not in the department with the academics. We're in the department with early learning and special education. And when pressed on that issue, the answer given was that it's because we have this complicated Perkins funding. But I think any of you sit on regular boards know how complicated, for example, reading Title I funding is. Very complicated, far more complicated, in fact, than Perkins. But they're still in the academic department. So it is a little bit worrisome that we're not actually at the table with core academics. We're sort of an entity that's like in this other department, educational programs.
Kind of like specialized education.
Right.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. It's an interesting read. I like sci-fi, so.
Oh, and supposedly it's done at other places. I like that one too, that she added. You know how that is.
Must be nice where she lives.
She came from where, Florida? Did she come from Florida?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think she lives in a different place now called Fantasyland. But since she didn't get any input on this, can we solicit, or can we submit unsolicited feedback telling her how crazy this is? Or?
It's a public document now. It was presented at the education committee. So.
Okay.
Well, there's a CTE group, right? Will there be a formal response to this, or what are the next steps here?
So I don't know exactly what will happen, but the concern is that there's not really anything meaty enough to even respond to. The CTE directors group, I would say, is last count, we're probably evenly split on whether or not we feel it's best to be our own district, or if we're wanting to be part of these, whatever turn out to be these districts, right? That end up being the 15 districts or the 20 districts or whatever. I'd say we're kind of evenly split on the governance question. We pretty much are all in line with all the, like, what falls under that. How do we actually ensure that CTE doesn't become an elective program, that we in fact stick to our mission of preparing students and adult learners for high wage, high skill, high demand careers, right? It's a technical trades training. It's while we are interested in having exposure, right? So kids get interested, the mission is not elective, right? The mission is training people for industry, right? For high demand, high wage, high skill jobs, careers. So I think all of the devils in the detail, there is, I think, no way to do more with less money. And just adding the middle school component is a lot more. And also very complicated, because are we talking about having actual certified CTE teachers at the middle schools? Because we don't probably have enough of them to populate all of those classes. And then if not, what is it? Is it the old, like when I was in school and you were in school, when the teacher who really liked the thing now taught it, as opposed to a technical expert teaching coding or something, right?
Yeah, what is middle school career training?
I don't know what.
Do you know what a chef does?
I mean, not to mention how you factor it into their schedule load.
Yeah.
I mean, there's already a full
Another
middle
building,
school
another-
schedule going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's some things, obviously, there's some interest in, like robotics and things, but there again, you need specialized teachers, your average middle. Well, just have to see, so, okay. Crazy.
Any other conversations regarding that? Questions? Anybody online? They could enlighten us about some idea? Good luck. Right. So, committee reports. Budget committee? I think we.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, there's one thing that's happened since we stopped the budget, well, we approved the budget.
Right.
And there's one thing that's happened is that we had a plan going forward to look at enrollment and closing classes and things like that. And that got kind of delayed, right, in policy. So I think now what we need to do maybe is come up with a list of possibilities or some thoughts on how to move forward with future budgets, things that might impact us going forward. If we do have to close a class, are there any, do we need to proceed with guidelines? If we have to come up with a modified budget, do we have any ideas? So maybe we should meet. I thought we canceled all of our budget meetings because we had a budget, but maybe we should get together and continue talking about some of these things.
So we do have the, I believe this month's budget, this month's was canceled, right?
Yes.
But we
yes.
have them regularly scheduled every month.
Okay.
There's also been a question about and this will be, I think probably either with this board or with the committee, I don't know. There's been a question about should we change the title to Finance Committee so that it's not so closely tied with just the budget. Several people have suggested that, so that may be a thing to take up as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a noob at this. I thought I had canceled both of the meetings, but
Yeah.
let's go with next month's as well.
Yes,
Okay.
that next meeting should be March.
February 12th.
Oh, I'm skipping a
this
month,
meeting.
sorry.
Going forward.
This meeting.
Okay.
March 5th, right?
February.
I mean, February 5th, I'm looking at February.
Yes, February 5th.
Sorry.
Okay, otherwise I think the budget committee did a bang up job in getting the budget.
Great leadership.
Negotiations, I think we kind of clarified
Covered that one.
end of it for the moment. We are definitely looking for new membership. The SBA has a program, you can watch it and ask some questions and so on. Feel free to talk to, well, it's just Judd and I right now. A lot of our experiences. Next contract will be the teacher's contract that's scheduled.
Who's that start next fall?
Yeah, everybody gets invitations and they send when they're ready and we tell them when we're ready and we go from there. Anyway,
Is it worth trying to set up sort of a pre-committee on that to get into what we would like to ask or work on in the?
it's never a bad idea. Not only that, but it's flying around there with other districts. You know, what do they? You know, we appreciate input from you people in regards to that. I think that's helpful. And any other conversations that go on at the State House would also be helpful. I can add to the governor's healthcare piece that I had a meeting last night with the state school board. They're going to do a meet and greet with the legislature next Friday at the State House. And some of us showed, they were looking for us to kind of get some talking points and so on. I talked about a couple of things that happened at the annual conference, some questions I had. They are definitely still looking for an RFP regarding the prescription part of the teacher's contract and trying to go out there and see if they can get another administrator. There's a new person running Blue Cross Blue Shield for the whole state right now. And so a little bit different philosophy, I think. And they're willing to talk to the NEA and to our group also. I think I'll know a little bit more after that meet and greet next Friday, but you know, some of us, I think we're a little ahead in regards to meeting with legislators and stuff. I got that impression. And they're going to try to do it as people come through. Nicole said she went through something like that yesterday. Was that superintendent's group did the same thing? And try and get the legislators kind of, if they have questions about how it's funded, couple questions about the last two negotiations. We're trying to adjust the membership because it's basically even Steven. And there's a couple other pieces in arbitration that we're looking at so that the arbitrators will come in a lot of times and we do winner take all. And there's some other steps that can be in, and they expressed interest at the end of it to be able to say, you know, there's parts of this we could, you know, lean to the way you presented things and the teachers presented things. So it's a legal piece that we're trying to change. Nothing major otherwise in that regard just yet, because again, we're appointed by the governor, so the legislator and the governor have a little more say on if that configuration will change. But other than that, I don't have anything else to say. regarding healthcare. And a lot of times people talked about like, what are some of the conversations you had during negotiations, what are concerns? They did an update on the RFP with the prescription medication and realizing that they may need, there's a possibility to save a lot of money if they do that, along with maybe looking at the different plans. But again, that's a negotiation piece, so they couldn't speak too much to that. Steve?
No, I was going to make an observation. I do negotiations at ACSD, and we started meeting in the spring. And one of the interesting things that we found out, we decided that we were going to go through the contract article by article. And you would be surprised the artifacts that you find in there that you probably want to change. Like, for example, saying that pregnancy will be treated like any other illness. That was a little awkward find, where we said, we might want to change that. So, like I said, contracts, they perpetuate, and sometimes you find some interesting things in there. So I would, and it's the pressure of the actual negotiations of having to come up with is off, and it gives you a chance to really be familiar with the contract and to get a list of things like, maybe we could change this, to kind of like load the agenda before you're actually at the negotiating table. So we found it to be very helpful. So.
Christy, when does Virgin start? Do you have any idea?
I don't, actually. I feel
This
like
question?
they're in arbitration right now, I think or actually, they're just starting with the teachers.
Did they do mediation first?
No, I think they just started this fall.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah. So,
You want to add anything to that?
I think actually Steve did a nice job of explaining what I was trying to get at, the value of the pre-meetings. So I thank you, Steve.
Facilities Committee.
I'm going to ask David to talk about that if he can.
We're really focusing on, I think, two things. One is North Campus project, and the other is a 5-year capital plan, which we're very early stages on. We met today with EEI with some drawings on the roof and some of the stuff. So they're going to present on the 22nd. EEI is going to present kind of a scope document for the renovations, and we'll have a much better idea on pricing and design and those kind of things. And EEI is coming to us, their lawyer is coming to us to give us legal reasoning why we don't need to bid out EEI again. It's some related to a performance contract, which is we're hiring them to improve our energy efficiencies, and there's some legal language that they're going to get to us, which will save us a good bit of time. Other than that, all's a go. Once March 3rd, once the vote happens, we will kick the project off formally and move quickly. Everybody thinks that this will be done by August. So it's going to be a quick.
The roof and the HVAC?
Roof, the HVAC,
Okay.
some of the internal stuff.
If we can move quickly, and that's
There
why
was-
we're doing this.
Okay, there were parts on the HVAC that they talked that needed to be
Can they get all the
ordered or
parts?
something.
Yep, the turnaround time is not like it used to be during COVID, so they can
Good.
get the equipment that they need pretty quickly.
And EEI is the exchange? Are they the company that's going to do that, or are they doing the roof? Or
EEI is what I was the performance manager. They're basically the contract construction manager, so they're
Clerk of the works.
managing,
Right.
Please call them.
and they're hiring the architect, and they're hiring
Okay.
the engineers, and they're doing the bidding and scoping and that kind of stuff.
Any questions?
No,
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
maybe
Go
a
ahead,
question, and also in addition, reading that ACSD is struggling to get the big bond that they were hoping to get, right?
It is likely, given the guidance that we've been given, that we will not be able to bond this year because they have said any bond debt, any kind of financing is included in the cap. We are right now hitting it, we're about 96%. If we would bond anything, we risk popping the cap because 4% is pretty close, and even on a small bond, of 50 million, small bond, the interest would pop us over the cap. And so we don't know what that means. And if we can't get the capital funding pulled out of the cap, it is unlikely that we'll be able to bond.
So that, I did interpret the newspaper article correctly.
Yes.
That's it. Because the reason I bring that up is because some of the capital stuff also affects us, such as the parking lot, if I'm not mistaken. The ACSD owns all the asphalt out there, which, as you know, is in hardly asphalt anymore.
All the potholes.
We have to work together with them a little bit or a lot bit. So their bond affects us, our budget affects everything. So anyway, just.
Yeah, but if you're curious, it's an interesting little read. The facilities examination of all the schools in ACSD. There's about 200 million capital that needs to be done to bring schools up to code, and there is no way we can do that, and there is no way the state's going to help us. So we got schools that are deferred again.
Well, thank you.
It just blows my mind away that we're still dealing with a big asbestos problem. I cannot. 2026, we are dealing with asbestos, and we can't get the money to get it out.
You don't have to tackle it until you do a project.
Exactly. And if we touch
And the
anything,
balloon,
especially in one of our older schools, has the most asbestos. So it's
First of all, super waiting to happen.
Thanks for that.
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Policy committee, how you guys doing over there?
Yeah, we're getting things together.
Plugging along?
We have a working document where we have gone through and used it to organize all of our policies. Although I took a first stab at it, Laura took it and turned it into a really, really nice spreadsheet. Our hope is that we are going to use it to guide our work on the policy committee, like to say who's on first, who's got what policy, and what we need to do to revise it, and to use that to dovetail in what VSBA has said they have recently done. So it's kind of a master. The policy database is great for details because you can go in there, you can see a policy, and you can see exactly all the details about it. But the 20,000 foot level, what needs to be done, what is currently pending, and who's working on what is in that working document. And Laura did a great job putting that in there and making it accessible. Our hope is that we are going to use it to guide our work, but eventually that it will be available to all board members to read, not to touch. And things are coming along. I am happy with the amount of progress we've made in revising policies before we hit the June 26th cliff, where we have to do everything else from that point on. But things are going well. You've got a few more policies coming up.
Yeah, speaking of that, we got 4 down below.
Yeah, 4 for first read tonight.
Yeah. Update on public education transformation.
I did that, yes.
You're good, okay. You ready to add your other question? You know where Nicole lives. Anyway, annual board work plan. Liz sent me hers from Mount Abe. I'm curious to see what they do. Steve, do you have one from Middlebury?
Steve's is linked there.
That's that link.
Okay, thank you.
If you look at it, it's a working document. So we're in the middle of January, and if you look at the stuff that's in the work plan up to this point, it's all the things that we've done already. And so it gives us an opportunity to see what's coming up, what's on the agenda. Like we do facilities. We're going to talk about facilities in a more scheduled basis. So Ripton gets this month, and Salisbury gets this month, and Middlebury gets this month, and so we kind of spread it out rather than at one time hitting all of the schools at once. when do we do academic reporting? When do we look at things like how do we manage the board transition that happens in March with the elections and all that kind of stuff? So it's a really high level view of this is kind of what the board does throughout the year and when they do it. And I thought it was really helpful to be able to see that and to know that in the spring we're going to be looking at this thing. And so I thought it might be handy, especially for people who are new to board work, to know
Exactly.
the season for when things are happening. So.
My name's is kind of like a spreadsheet. Like you said, Liz, are you on? Obviously,
Yes.
it obviously is evolving. You want to talk? They don't have it in front of them, and I apologize for that. But maybe if you send one of your copies to Nicole, that would be helpful for us. But a little bit different setup.
Will do, and this makes me think about, we don't have a scheduled date to meet with the superintendent committee, do we?
For
A couple of us said that we, like with Christina, we were gonna get together. Or did we decide to start that for next year? Did we form another
we have an executive session coming up. Can we talk about it then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I just wanted to
Thank
make
you.
sure I wasn't missing something I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's all. But yeah, I can forward that.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
That would be really helpful, thank you. And similar, but more in the spreadsheet, month by month, there's a setup. So you can really look, forward and backwards and see where everything is. And then if you do have a question about what is this, you have an opportunity to do that.
Do you want to, are you interested in Madison Northwest?
Yes, definitely.
Oh.
That would be great. And if you would give it to Nicole, then we can sit
sure.
and do that. And it's something, because there are going to be things that she remembers, I don't remember, or, that Austin needs to add to it or whatever. So there's a bunch of people involved in it, but it shouldn't take very long to do it. But especially for newer members, I think it'll be really helpful. Like Steve said. Thanks, Steve, for recognizing the need for it. Definitely. Okay, and for discussion, we are checking off number 1, the annual board work plan. We'll work on that. And 3, 4, 5, and 6. I guess I will turn them over to you if you want to, obviously you can read them on your links.
Yeah,
If you haven't already.
Yeah, and just as a refresher, these have all been examined by the policy committee. Different people have different ones. I off the top of my head, I have my spreadsheet, so I don't have to remember. I know I have C3. Dan has drugs and alcohol. I think Laura's got English language. Not. He always has policies around drugs and alcohol. To apply anything there, which so.
He did admit he was a dead.
If I could, C2, there's a kind of a heavy lift for administration. I don't know if that's been done yet, but it's a new policy. It's a lot of stuff in there for admin. You got to have counseling, you got all this other stuff. It's not something we got to do. It's pretty heavy. So please take a look at that if there's any feedback on implementation.
Yeah, do we do all that stuff here?
Yeah, it's a little bit tough because we're not an LEA,
Right.
and we don't have that kind of counselor. We have a college and career counselor. It's a different. They have a different certification and everything. So.
And we haven't had this policy previously, so this is new for us.
It's a sticky thing because both the legislature and the VSBA seem to think that CTEs are just like K-12 schools. And so we get very little help from either one of them because this one, C2, and the one about behavior threat assessment, they said, you will all have a policy about, and we can't say, wait a minute, we can't because we don't do those things. The sending school does that, and we don't do that. So what do you want us to do? Well, the law is you have to have a policy about this, whether you do it or not. And so that's kind of what C2 is in this situation.
Yeah, and C1 is required too.
Yep. All 4 of these are required. The nice thing about C3, which is mine, is that all the changes that happen to it as a required policy are below this little word I call or. And the first one says, this district does not provide transportation or, and we are above the or. We do not provide transportation, so we don't have to do anything about the rest of the changes in that document. So we are essentially keeping the exact same policy because everything that changed in VSBA's version is below the or. So we don't have to do anything to change it, and we already have the policy, so we're covered. But the idea here is to present these as what we have, what the revised policy is, and I believe the third link is the VSBA version of the policy that we're talking about. So it is, right now, this is just, policy committee is ready to hand these on, and the board has to approve them. Read them at your leisure if you have any questions. C1 is...
Mine.
Oh,
Yeah,
Laura,
it's Laura's,
okay.
not mine.
C1's Laura, C2 is Dan, C3 is me, and C4 is Laura again.
Yep.
So,
I just want to point out that C1 looks like it's a tremendous amount of changes. It's not. It's just a change of a footnote. But the way the combine compare worked, I couldn't get it to take out all of the red lines. So it looks like it's a totally different policy. It's not a totally different policy. It's just a change of a footnote. So.
Any other questions? I encourage you to read the links. It's helpful for them with all the work that they're doing and all the new stuff.
and it gets you familiar with the policies that we have.
Right. Okay. Public comment on any topic. Anybody been some exciting place they want to share that with us, or any other?
It looks like the member of the public that was with Laura has left.
I'll just say thanks to Christina for the paperless recommendation.
Oh.
We kill a lot of trees in the business
Joint
office, and
effort.
it's nice to see counterbalance.
I really appreciate it too.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it's worked out, and there's always paper available, so that's great.
And Bill mentioned something, in the event that somebody's interested, evidently a couple students took advantage of it in his phlebotomy class. He has a friend that does the recycling for computers and things, so if you need a laptop or whatever, I guess they're a bargain. So if you need that, or somebody in your family does, he has access to that. So for some people, that's a challenge.
Just a couple of reminders. We had our first award ceremony today. The awards breakfast went really well. There's another one tomorrow. You're all invited. Come at 7:45 if you can. And also on February 5th from 4:30 to 6 is our open house showcase. So that's the big one.
I'm sorry, when?
Oh, wow.
February
Coming
5th.
right up.
Yeah, it will be here before we know it.
And Wendy, can I tag team on that? So yes, I just want to let the board know too. Yesterday, I sent the PAC calendar to all of you, and that has all of the board committee agendas. It has all of our awards, breakfasts, our open houses. So that is there for you guys to utilize as well for that piece. So you can just throw it onto your calendar. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I also made a few more links on the board page with the documents that I shared with you throughout the year when they change of when your committees are, who's on your committees. And so hopefully to make it a little more useful to you guys and a little more at your fingertips to answer your questions quickly.
Yeah, combining the calendars makes it look like I have a life now.
You're a busy man, Dan. You're a busy man.
Wait till you do that drug and alcohol one. You're really gonna have to fill that calendar up.
Actually, that was very good, because I go to add it and it's already there. Nice.
I just wanted to add a congratulations to Wendy. She was the master of ceremonies for the breakfast this morning. It went very well. It was very smooth. Sometimes it's a little, you watch and you go, those guys really know what they're doing.
Thank you.
Honest, full disclosure, I've been to a lot of those. That was probably one of the most well-run.
Awesome.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah.
And that French toast thingy was really good.
How many honorees?
Let's see, yeah.
27.
Six.
Okay.
Well, that's over the 2 days. isn't it?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but that's a
Nice.
lot. That's excellent. And they love it.
Yeah, it
And the
really
parents.
is one of my favorite
Parents.
events, and I say that,
Parents
but I
love it,
really
don't
mean
they?
it. The celebration of learning is great, but that one's a much
Yeah.
heavier lift, so it's.
Oh, yeah, and the parents are so excited. Oh, great
Yeah.
parents, whoever comes,
Yeah.
family members, they just.
And all of our students came today, and
Oh.
everybody had at least one person with
Oh,
them,
good.
so that
Oh,
was
awesome. I
nice.
was gonna
Yeah.
ask that. Yeah, great.
It was a wonderful event,
Yeah, it
and
was.
they like it when other people show up, like the board members.
Mhm.
I was sitting at a table that, it's a mother and her daughter. Her daughter doesn't talk much at all. She's in the automobile program. She's the
quiet one.
redhead.
Wow.
Quiet one.
But she's third generation to come here.
That's kind
And
of
they were
cool.
both very proud of that.
Yep.
But nice kids.
Yeah, 90.
I'm gonna make it to one of those someday. They're so hard to get to.
There's another one tomorrow morning.
Yeah, tomorrow morning.
Bit of a drive.
I was gonna say, what are you doing?
The snow was dark.
So dark this morning, it was like ridiculous. I don't think it got light to what, 10 or 11 maybe?
Tired people don't do that.
I'm trying, it's not working.
Yeah, I hate to get up when I had to get up for this, but I got up because it's worth it.
That was good.
Yep.
And with the 3 in culinary, awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure they have a lot of help, but I know you guys are
definitely.
good about that. But it's another piece, but they enjoy doing it, I know that too.
Mhm.
And please thank Jill.
Sure will.
And I noticed that she's been doing, I guess they did something at Mount Abe. Did they go over and do a little presentation over there and things? And
Brought some cookies.
awesome. And the partnership possibly with the college too, I think that's a really good idea. You know, and there are a few new businesses around town. I don't know if they've been over to Domino's and a few others that are. Mark Perrin used to be on this board for many, many
Did
years.
Domino's buy his business?
No.
No.
Thank goodness.
No, but he sold his business.
But the gentleman that owns the arcade on the end of that
That's right,
building
next to it.
purchased it. And I guess he had some pizza training with one of the chains, and so he thought that went well with the arcade pizza. That was the article I read. But, yeah. And that particular building is now full, which is very unusual right now with everybody else in Bristol and so on, trying to find people to open up some sort of business or whatever. But yeah, they're doing okay. But I think Mark wants to travel. Maybe his wife has already been doing it, so maybe. But
He was on this board for a long time.
for a long time.
Very, very
Yeah.
long.
And he hired a lot of people from culinary here and friends and neighbors and so on. He was really good about training a lot of people, including my daughter.
We'll say too that arcade is really fun. We had family visiting over the holidays and it was bitter cold, and so we were trying to find, and we did the whole pizza and then the arcade thing. It was so much fun, and it was a great way to spend a couple hours. And it's not, you're not pumping quarters into the machines all the time because you just pay like $10 an hour.
Cool.
So the machines are largely just
Oh,
open.
that's
It is a really good time, and I think as they get to integrate the two things more and
Right.
more, it'll be even
I
better.
think that was it.
And an alum from the ART program works at the arcade. And it was so much fun to go in and go, I know who you are. I don't remember her name, of course.
There you go.
But and it was lots of fun. It's a really nice. It's right by the Green Peppers, right across from the Midway Co-op in that.
In the Shaw's.
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 Yeah,
Center.
it's a whole other building.
Did you want to add to that conversation?
Oh, it's super fun.
We go frequently.
Members.
Oh, they do have memberships. Oh, that's good. Yeah, anyway, thank you. Board reflection. Good time. Matt.
Thank you very much for running a tight meeting. We are nearly on schedule, which is rare and wonderful. I felt like there was plenty of robust discussion in spite of keeping it to a schedule. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next meeting,
I also-
the other events are there. Online, somebody.
Yeah, just want to say thank you for, I read the articles in the paper that you've done recently, Nicole, and I appreciate your work on that. I think they're really helpful for informing your community.
Well, thanks, Liz, on the update on what, Mount Abe's doing for community involvement piece, because I know you guys have been really working on that, and trying to make changes with a lot of input. Are you finding you're getting a lot of input on those community engagement meetings?
I think right now we're hearing from people who have a firm perspective, perhaps from previous years.
Right.
So I'm hoping that as information gets out and that I think my hope is that we will hear more. And I guess kind of what I'm learning is that you are going to mostly hear from people that have objections, but then in wandering around our communities, people who are totally fine with it, they don't necessarily reach out. So it's really interesting just learning how community engagement works, right? And you don't hear as much from some folks, but I think as long as we're pushing information out and people are looking at it and reading through, and we've got more studies coming along. Truex Collins is studying all of the buildings for programmatic purposes. So I do hope to hear from a lot more people. It's pretty quiet at the moment, but I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for asking, sorry.
That's okay. Has anybody attended, New Haven kind of has their own little forum going on. And they incorporated all the departments within the town, planning, everything else. And I don't know, I haven't been to one. I've seen and talked to a couple of people that have been. So it's a little bit different, but it's not just focused around school. And I think that's been a helpful piece for them to come and, like you said, become educated about what the planning board does, what the conservation board does. And it may foster more volunteers. I think that's the other thing I was wondering if you're getting more school board possibly applicants from that adventure.
Yeah, I hope so. I definitely hope so. And what New Haven is doing is fantastic because it's really driven by their community and school boards, right? We're schools, but we don't future plan for communities.
Right.
We future plans just for the school. So it's really exciting that they're engaging in that work, and I hope more of our towns do.
Yeah, and it's not really run by, anybody from the school group either. I think that's the other part that's kind of useful for our town in that regard. And, they worry about their buildings, new, old, ones that have been moved, and what they're going to use them for. And that's been an insightful educational piece for a lot of people in town. But thank you for that. So next, again, all the dates for, future meetings.
Ken, for the annual meeting,
Yes.
it's generally the case that all the board members come in person, and that's our one opportunity to sort of take pictures too. So I'm really hoping that you'll all show up in person for the annual meeting, if it's at all possible.
We're your finest.
Yeah.
So if you can, just for the bulletin board, she needs a new picture.
And the website.
Yes, thank you. We're trying to update. There's some people on there that aren't here anymore.
And we have the governor coming, or?
And yes,
Yep.
Jim Douglas will be our moderator, so that'll be
Or past
fun.
governor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the meeting starts at 4.
4, yes. Make sure you note the earlier time.
Yes. Anyway,
The March, is that our reorganization meeting, or are we, I know all the other boards, they reorganize in March after town meeting day. I can only speak for the people that I know. I don't think anybody's up for election that has elected office. I don't know, Christina.
I am not up for re-election. I will be back 1 more year. Okay. Unless somebody wants to take my place. It's highly unlikely, so.
I'm finishing 3 years, I might be, I haven't heard, am I up?
That's a good question. Didn't you get elected last year?
No,
You
it's
didn't?
been 3 years,
goes fast.
it's a 3-year appointment, I believe,
It is.
isn't it?
Let me ask about that, because
You
that
trying
would
to
mean
get out of
that
it,
you
Dan?
would need to come to the annual meeting and get re-elected.
The what?
Yeah.
Trying to get out of it?
No.
There,
trying to get out
I've
of
seen
policy.
people get re-elected from the floor when they're not even.
Yeah, by the way.
Yeah. There is that.
We had a chance last meeting, it wasn't here.
Yeah.
And everybody's different, Christine. Like at mine, make a phone call or send a little email.
They have to formally elect you.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I let them know.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, when I went to the, around the show over there, I stood up and I said, I know a few of you here, but, this is who I am and what I do. And they're all like, oh, okay. And I don't even know if we had maybe 2 people ask questions and they were in reference to, if I have a community project, is there anybody that I can talk to about having a time? And we're like, oh, yeah, sure. But you're not alone. And they were like, oh, okay, book cases, whatever it was. But I think that was about it.
I'm gonna send them a note right now, Dan, and ask.
That's it. We're gonna get in.
Thank you. Yeah.
And that he's willing to do it again. Look at him. As long as he can ski.
I got this because I was standing in line and everybody else stepped back.
That's what happened. Or your wife went. She pushed you forward, right? Anyway. We need to have an executive session. We all know what that means, right?
Let me get my cheat sheet out.
Is that,
And it is written there, but
it's written there?
Up for reflection? No.
I believe it's written on the thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I think 313 is you have to have a finding first. So it's one of the 2-parters. So I make a motion that we find, I move that we go into executive session for the purpose of discussing appointments, evaluations, and of a public officer or employee per VSA 313A1.
Seconded.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Didn't you just say you needed a finding motion first?
Oh, did I say that wrong?
You did the motion for executive, not the finding.
Oh, okay. I move to find the premature, I move to find that because we are discussing an appointment, employment, or evaluation of a public officer or employee, that places the board at substantial disadvantage because the board risks disclosing personnel issues if it discusses the issue in open session. So that's all. That we find that is true.
Somebody seconded it.
I seconded it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is that better, Linda?
Is that it? Oh my.
And then the regular.
And then we have to vote on that.
Vote first.
We need a motion, which is on the floor, and it's been seconded. We need to vote on that. Everybody in favor of that, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none.
Since we have found that is true, I make a motion that we go into executive session for VSA 313A3, which is the appointment, employment, or evaluation of a public officer or employee.
Seconded.
good, okay.
Dan. Dan again?
Yeah, Dan again.
Thank you.
It solidified you being back. I'm getting really good at that. Judge would delegate. Judge usually. Anyway, all those in favor of the motion on the floor,
Aye.
please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, we are officially